the galaxy lived under a quiet fear. Every major trade path, every safe jump lane, and every shared law was watched by the galactic predators. They did not rule with open war. They ruled with pressure. Ships that obeyed passed safely. Ships that questioned vanished from schedules and records. Smaller species learned to lower their heads and speak softly. Silence became a habit that felt like survival. The predators believed this order was permanent. They believed fear was the strongest tool in the universe. When humans first appeared, the reaction was mild interest at best. A new species from a harsh world, thin-skinned, slow compared to many others and limited in number. They were allowed entry only as observers. No fleets. No weapons. No authority. Just presence. James, Emily, and Michael arrived together on a neutral station near one of the main trade routes. Their ship was small and plain. No sharp edges. No symbols of power. The Predators' officials barely looked at it. To the Predators, humans were temporary. A curious note in the records. A species that would adapt or fade. James watched the station carefully as he walked its wide halls. His face stayed calm, his steps steady. He noticed which corridors were clean and which were ignored. He noticed how some species moved freely while others stayed close to walls. He noticed guards placed where no danger seemed to exist, and missing where danger clearly waited. Emily spent her time in shared chambers and open markets. She listened more than she spoke. She watched trade exchanges and rule enforcement. She saw how laws changed based on who was speaking. She saw how fear worked better than weapons. She also saw how tired everyone looked. Michael worked near the station systems. He asked polite questions. Simple questions. How power was routed. How air was recycled. How emergency signals were handled. The answers were often careless. The Predators trusted their control too much to worry about details. The Predators did not see this as a threat. They saw curiosity. They saw weakness. They saw humans trying to understand a galaxy that would never truly accept them. Meetings were held in large halls filled with tall shapes and heavy voices. The Predators spoke loudly and slowly as if explaining things to children. They reminded everyone who controlled the routes. They reminded everyone who decided access. James never argued. He only nodded. Emily wrote everything down. Michael memorized patterns. Other species noticed this behavior. Some were confused. Some were curious. Most were afraid to even acknowledge the humans. Fear made people cautious. Fear made people quiet. One evening cycle, a minor dispute broke out between two merchant groups. The Predators stepped in quickly. Their ruling favored the larger group as it always did. The smaller group accepted the decision without protest. Their ships left the station soon after. James watched their departure. He noticed damaged hulls that would struggle on long routes. He noticed low fuel reserves. Emily asked a simple question later, quietly, to a station worker. What happens to ships like that? The worker hesitated, then answered softly. They do not return. The Predators held a private review session and allowed the humans to observe. The review praised efficiency and order. No mention was made of loss. No mention was made of balance. Michael noticed something else. System strain. Power fluctuations caused by forced routing. Emergency systems that had been disabled to save resources. Everything worked because it had to. Nothing was prepared for failure. Humans knew failure well. James remembered stories from Earth. Storms. Power loss. Long nights. Humanity learned not because systems were perfect but because they broke often. Humans learned to plan for when things went wrong. Emily shared food with a small group of station residents. Simple food. Nothing impressive. The act itself mattered more than the meal. She listened to stories of closed routes and sudden rule changes. She did not promise help. She did not offer solutions. She only listened. Michael ran simulations quietly. He did not change anything. He only watched. He learned how small changes could cause large collapse. The Predators laughed during their gatherings. They spoke of control as if it were natural law. They spoke of humans as harmless guests. One Predator official said openly, "They will adapt or leave." All do. James heard this and smiled politely. The humans sent reports back to Earth. Calm reports. Careful words. No anger. No fear. Just facts. Patterns. Weak points not in strength but in thinking. Other species began to notice something strange. The humans were not rushing. They were not trying to impress. They were not trying to challenge authority. They were simply present, steady, and calm. That calm unsettled some. A small systems test failed one cycle. Lights dimmed briefly in a lower sector. Panic spread quickly among residents. The predators responded with threats and warnings. Order returned but trust did not. James helped guide people through dark halls. Emily stayed with frightened families. Michael assisted quietly in restoring systems, following existing rules, never crossing lines. When the lights came back, the predators claimed success. The humans said nothing. In private, Emily wrote a single sentence in her log. They rule by fear, but fear is fragile. James added another. They do not see us because they do not believe we matter. Michael finished the report with calm certainty. They have forgotten how to prepare. The galaxy still feared the galactic predators. Trade continued. Laws were enforced. Silence remained the safest choice. But something had changed. For the first time in a long while, fear was being studied instead of obeyed. The shared station sat at the edge of several trade routes. It was old, patched many times and never fully repaired. The galactic predators allowed it to exist because it was useful, not because it mattered. Ships from weaker worlds gathered there to trade what little they had. Stronger groups passed through quickly, taking more than they gave. David noticed the unfair rules almost at once. Dock fees changed depending on ship size. Power access depended on who paid extra. Emergency repairs were delayed unless a predator mark was present. Everything was legal, written clearly in station law. Fairness was never mentioned. Jessica watched how the rules were enforced. Predator guards never raised their voices. They did not need to. A single look was enough. Merchants bowed their heads and agreed. Complaints ended before they began. Humans did not challenge this system. They did not argue in meetings or raise concerns in public halls. They did something else. They wrote things down. David kept careful records of delays, shortages, and failures. He logged which worlds were affected most. He noticed patterns. The same names appeared again and again. The same ships were always last in line. Jessica spent her time with station workers. Cleaners, technicians, and loaders. The ones no one thanked. She listened to their problems. Broken tools. Failing lights. Air vents that rattled at night. She did not promise change. She asked what could be fixed now. John and Ashley arrived soon after, assigned as technical support. Their job was simple. Help where allowed. Touch nothing restricted. Follow every rule. They began with ignored systems. Old power relays in storage bays. Water recyclers that no longer ran at full strength. Communication panels with delayed signals. Small problems that caused large stress. Ashley worked slowly and carefully. She explained every step to the local technicians. She did not act like an expert. She acted like a helper. John focused on training. He showed workers how to fix problems themselves using basic tools. No special parts. No advanced tech. Just understanding. The predators noticed this activity and laughed. Why waste effort there? One predator official said openly. Those systems are acceptable. Acceptable meant barely working. David heard this and said nothing. He added another note to his records. Jessica saw something else change. Workers began to speak more openly around humans. Not loudly. Not boldly. Just honestly. They talked about lost ships and closed routes. They talked about fear becoming routine. Humans listened. One cycle, a shipment from a weak world was delayed again. The predators ruled that the delay was the ship's fault. Fees increased. Access was reduced. The crew accepted the decision in silence. That night, John and Ashley stayed late. They fixed a pressure fault that had slowed docking for months. The next cycle, docking time improved slightly. Only a little. But enough. The crew noticed. They did not thank the predators. They thanked the humans. This made some predator officials uncomfortable. Gratitude was a kind of loyalty. Loyalty was meant for rulers. The predators watched more closely, but they still did not interfere. Humans were not breaking rules. They were following them perfectly. David shared his records with station leadership, quietly and privately. No accusations. Just numbers. Just timelines. Just outcomes. Jessica organized shared meals in common areas. Simple food. Shared space. No speeches. People talked. Trust grew slowly, like something fragile but alive. The predators dismissed all of this as harmless behavior. Calm hands. Soft voices. No force. They mistook patience for fear. One minor system failure tested this belief. A cooling unit failed in a lower sector. The predators ordered an evacuation and sealed the area. Panic spread. Traders feared losses. Workers feared punishment. Humans responded quietly. John helped reroute cooling using existing lines. Ashley guided local technicians through the process. Jessica kept people calm. David tracked resource flow and adjusted schedules. The system stabilized. The predators returned and claimed control. They warned everyone about future failures. But the people knew who had helped them. After that, when systems needed repair, station workers came to the humans first. Not for permission. For advice. The predators noticed this shift. They laughed again, louder this time. "Let them fix scraps," one official said. "It keeps them busy." Humans stayed busy. David's records grew longer. Patterns became clearer. Failures always hurt the same groups. Repairs always helped the same ones. Jessica wrote a message to Earth. "They rule by rules, not strength. Rules can be changed." John sent another. "People trust those who help without threat." Ashley added simply, "Patience works." The station began to feel different. Not safer. Not free. Just less heavy. The predators still ruled. Trade routes stayed under their control. Laws stayed unfair. But fear was no longer the only thing holding the station together. Humans had not fought. They had not demanded. They had not challenged authority. They had repaired, recorded, and helped quietly. And slowly the galaxy began to notice that calm did not mean weak. Sometimes calm meant ready. The major trade hub had always been called stable. That word appeared in every predator report. Stable meant profitable. Stable meant controlled. Stable did not mean safe. For years the hub was pushed beyond its limits. More ships were allowed than systems could support. Power was rerouted again and again to favor important routes. Emergency reserves were reduced to increase daily output. Every warning was delayed. Every small failure was ignored. Then, during a heavy traffic cycle, the systems failed. At first it was a flicker. Lights dimmed across the central ring. Communications lagged by seconds, then minutes. Docking clamps froze in place. Alarms sounded, then went silent when backup power failed. Panic spread fast. Ships tried to leave at the same time. Traffic lanes clogged. Smaller vessels were pushed aside by larger ones. Crews shouted. Automated systems locked down without clear commands. The galactic predators responded the only way they knew how. They argued. Officials blamed each other. Orders changed every few minutes. Threats were made against station staff. Guards were deployed to control crowds instead of systems. Fear returned, louder than before. Daniel and Lauren were already moving. They had been stationed at the hub months earlier, assigned as support planners. Their work had been ignored. Their reports marked as low priority. Still they prepared. When the first major failure hit, Daniel opened stored files. Maps. Resource charts. Old maintenance logs. He knew where power could still flow if shared correctly. Lauren moved into the central coordination room. Not the command chamber but a side hub used for logistics. She opened communication lines to every willing species. She did not ask who ruled. She asked who could help. Humans did not give orders. They asked questions. Which docks still had power? Which ships could generate energy? Which crews had medical supplies? Which species could operate in low air zones? Responses came slowly at first, then faster. Species that had never worked together began to share information. Not because they trusted each other. Because they trusted the calm voices guiding them. The predators noticed this and tried to take control. They demanded authority. They threatened punishment. Lauren kept her voice steady. "We can argue later. Right now we need power flow." Daniel rerouted energy from non-critical systems. He shut down empty halls and unused displays. He opened shared access to emergency reserves that had been locked for years. This broke several predator rules. But the systems came back online. Air stabilized in 3 sectors. Communications returned in short bursts. Docking resumed in controlled waves. People saw what was happening. They followed. Engineers from different worlds worked side by side. Medical teams shared supplies without tracking ownership. Pilots followed human-managed traffic paths because they worked. The predators tried to reassert control. They sent guards to the coordination room. The guards stopped at the door. Inside, dozens of species worked together. Shutting it down would collapse everything again. For the first time, the predators hesitated. Daniel and Lauren did not celebrate. They did not speak of victory. They focused on survival. Hours passed. The hub did not fully recover, but it held. When power finally stabilized, the panic faded into exhaustion. Ships remained docked. Repairs began. The predators issued statements. They claimed responsibility. They warned of future punishment for rule violations. Few listened. Everyone knew what had saved them. Later, as systems cooled and lights stayed steady, Lauren reviewed the logs. The failure had not been sudden. It had been slow. Years of misuse. Years of ignored warnings. Daniel sent a quiet report to Earth. They planned for control. We planned for failure. Other species sent messages too. Not to the predators. To the humans. The hub survived. Not because someone ruled harder, but because someone was ready for things to break. After the trade hub crisis, the galaxy did not return to normal. Routes reopened. Stations functioned again. But something unseen had shifted. Worlds that once waited for predator orders began to ask humans for advice. Not loudly. Not publicly. Quiet messages arrived through shared channels. Simple questions. How to balance power use. How to plan for failure. How to share responsibility without losing control. Humans answered carefully. They did not demand loyalty. They did not ask for tribute. They shared methods. Clear plans. Simple rules that focused on safety first. Small agreements formed between nearby worlds. They shared emergency access codes. They coordinated traffic during peak cycles. They created backup systems that belonged to everyone, not just the strongest. The galactic predators noticed too late. At first, they dismissed the changes as temporary. They believed fear would pull everyone back. Fear had always worked. But ships began to reroute. Not away from predator space but around predator control. Trade continued without asking permission. Stations coordinated directly with each other. Predator officials grew louder. Their threats grew sharper. And their allies began to leave. Some worlds stopped attending predator councils. Others sent observers instead of leaders. A few openly refused new rules, citing shared agreements with neighbors. The predators responded with warnings and sanctions. They did not work. Fear lost its grip when people saw another way. A full council session was finally called. Attendance was thin. Many seats remained empty. Humans were invited not as observers but as speakers. James stood when called. He did not wear symbols of rank. He did not raise his voice. He did not accuse. He spoke slowly using simple words. For a long time, he said, fear kept things moving. Fear is fast. Fear is easy. But fear breaks systems. The council chamber was quiet. When systems break, James continued, people look for safety, not power. They follow those who help them survive. Some predator leaders shifted. Others stared forward. You plan to control everything, James said. But control cannot fix what it refuses to see. He did not say you failed. He did not need to. Humans plan for failure, he said. Not because we are weak. Because failure always comes. The room stayed silent. Stability built on fear always cracks, James finished. Stability built on care lasts. No one interrupted him. The predators tried to respond. Their words sounded thin. Promises came too late. Threats sounded empty in a room that had already learned not to fear. After the council, more worlds withdrew their support. Shared agreements expanded. Predator-controlled routes grew quiet. James returned to his team. He did not celebrate. The shift was complete. The galaxy was no longer listening to those who ruled. It was listening to those who prepared. And the predators felt it. Their power was fading. Not stolen. Outgrown. The change did not come with a ceremony. There were no loud announcements or victory displays. It came quietly through updates and records, through small decisions repeated many times. The galaxy began to rewrite its files. Old classifications were reviewed. Threat levels were removed. Control titles were softened, then erased. The galactic predators were no longer listed as rulers of trade and law. They were listed as a major species, nothing more. Important but not above others. Some predators protested. They demanded corrections. They claimed history was being stolen from them. The archivists did not argue. They simply recorded what now existed. Humans were given a new description. Not leaders. Not enforcers. Partners. Planners. Coordinators during crisis. The words were simple but their meaning spread far. Emily sat in a quiet room on a shared station, reading the final version of the report. She had written much of it herself, but it did not feel like her work alone. It was built from thousands of messages, logs, and shared records from many worlds. She remembered how it had begun. Fear everywhere. Silence in meetings. Rules that punished the weak. Now routes were shared. Backup systems were common. No single group held all power. Emily paused and looked through the station window. Ships moved in steady patterns. No rushing. No crowding. Traffic was slower but safer. James walked in quietly and sat across from her. He looked tired but calm. It's done, Emily said. The records are finalized. James nodded. How did they word it? Emily smiled slightly. Carefully. Michael joined them later carrying data pads. Some predator worlds are adapting faster than expected, he said. They're using shared systems now. James was not surprised. Control was their habit, he said. Not their nature. Across the galaxy, former predator officials adjusted to the new balance. Some resisted and faded into isolation. Others learned. They discovered that cooperation did not mean weakness. It meant survival without constant fear. Worlds that once hid now spoke openly. They formed councils without threats. Disagreements still happened. Problems still existed. But when systems failed, people did not panic. They planned. Emily finished the report and added the final summary. It did not speak of victory. It did not praise humanity. It simply stated what had happened. Humans did not conquer the galaxy. Verse followed. She sent the repo. Hey, outgrew it. And Artie. Messages came back. Not praise. Gratitude. Quiet thanks. Shared plans for the future. The galaxy moved on. No rulers stood above it now. Only people learning to stand together.